Bibbidi bobbidi drop it. Hey everybody, it's Friday and this is the Young Turks. Jank's still gone, I'm here, Johnny DeRolla. Ben and Michael joining me for what should be a good first hour, I think. We
always say that before the show, though. So.
We always say that. We're hopeful people.
It's going to be a great hour. Oh, it's going to be an awesome hour.
Yeah.
It can't be that every time.
But sometimes we're lying because we look at the rundown, we know it's weak. But I think
that's
it's perfectly
true. Yeah,
fine
that's a good point. Today's a fine lineup.
We've got some serious stuff, and then we also have something that has no purpose being on the rundown, except that I'm leading the show, and so I get to put it there. So it'll be fun though. That'll be our dessert if we get through all the important topical policy stuff. Yeah, it has nothing to do with video games.
I love Game of Thrones.
It doesn't have anything to do with it. I have more than 2 interests. I have 3, and this is the 3rd one.
Okay,
so you struck out.
Electric cars.
What's that?
Electric cars.
Have you heard about the Tesla Roadster? Come on, everybody. I know there's a lot of haters of electric cars out there.
Walmart and JB Hunt have ordered them already.
Really?
Yeah, they're getting big corporate orders for these things. Yeah.
Now look, I know that like Tesla's new, like the truck and the Roadster is not going to convince people necessarily that they need to switch over because the Roadster is going to cost $1 bajillion. But if you have, no, you caused this. But when you see that this car can go more than 600 miles on a charge and has a 0 to 60 of 1.9 seconds, how can you deny that the future is electric?
Okay, now it's gonna be a great show.
Okay, now it's gonna be a great show. I'm excited, okay? I'm gonna get one of those someday. Anyway, let's jump into the big news then. Unfortunately, we're going from electric cars to something related but sadder. Yesterday, there was an environmental disaster that literally no one could have predicted. No one did predict it, actually, and it has to do with the Keystone Pipeline. It actually had a spill. Like the oil that's supposed to travel inside of it got out somehow, which seems impossible. I know it's made of metal, but it actually happened. The pipeline leaked Thursday morning, spilling about 5,000 barrels of oil or 210,000 gallons of oil southeast of the small town of Amherst in northeast South Dakota. It's like a logic puzzle to figure out where in South Dakota that is. But anyway, the pipeline has also had other smaller spills, by the way. 400 barrels each in 2011 and 2016, all in that same area, actually. In response to the reports coming out that that spill had actually happened, TransCanada said it shut down the flow of oil in the pipeline at 6 a.m. Quote, after a drop in pressure was detected in its operating system resulting from an oil leak that is under investigation. They give the rough idea, basically, of where it had happened there. And I know, it's like, what do you say at a time like this? The oil got out on the ground.
Yeah.
It seemed like such a sure thing.
Well, it was a sure thing. It leaked.
It did leak, and it leaks all the time. And so they're talking about this leak, and there were the 2 similar size leaks. But we did a story like 6 months ago. I think it was in Oklahoma, I'm not 100% sure there, maybe you can find the video, of the hundreds and hundreds of not reported leaks that have happened throughout.
Like Missouri, I think there was Missouri or Arkansas actually.
It might have been somewhere around there, but it's just a routine thing now. It's not necessarily always 210,000 gallons, but jokes aside, like we've been saying the whole time, leak after leak after leak, we come back and say, hey, maybe this is inherently a dangerous way to fuel an economy. There's not a lot of damage done routinely from solar or wind leaks, okay? Maybe your hair gets messed up a bit, but that's about it.
Well, easy, partner.
It's a disaster for Ben.
It depends on the day.
Yeah.
The other thing here, and I have no expertise to lend to this, except that the number of times that a company has reported a leak and then that leak has been an accurate depiction of the leak, 0.
Right.
Yes.
I mean, so when they say, I hope it's true, but when they say generally 210,000 gallons, it turns out it's 2,210,000.
Yeah, God only knows.
Yeah, I mean the general operating procedure in environmental disasters like this, energy company disasters. I mean, look, we all saw the China syndrome. Right?
Of course. Well, John didn't. But.
Right, it's a film. No, you downplay it.
Car chase.
And so I hope that when we hear the truth about the leak, that it is no greater than that. But I wouldn't be surprised.
But they say they explain it away too. They say, well, this was caused by something that was installed improperly. Well, okay, right. That's what can happen if you have that. And then they said, like, based on what we know, and you'll probably get to this, John, but based on what we know, it hasn't affected the water table or the base of water,
right?
Right, based on what we know. But it could have, but here's when it wouldn't if it weren't there in the first place.
Yeah, look, if there was evidence that it had happened in the first 24 hours that it affected the water, fine. but I'm not simply going to trust that because you haven't detected it in the first hour, we're good. And I know that the tribal council in the area has put out, they're talking about working with the federal authorities to try to contain this because obviously they feel responsible for that area, although they are not responsible for that pipe. That's TransCanada that does that. But there's a huge water reservoir there, like in that area. Not a reservoir technically, but there's the body of water that could potentially be contaminated. And I'm glad that you brought up that, it was just because of a ring that was wrong or there was a bad seam. But like when we said that this was gonna happen, what did you think we thought was gonna happen? That the pipe was evil and wanted to spill?
Yeah, but they
no,
count
there's
on
gonna be some sort of mechanical failure.
Part of selling this is knowing that we expect there to be a leak, so that then when there is a leak, they can blame it on something or say, look, there are a few leaks here and there. That's part of getting this thing working. That's, but when it's a catastrophe, then you can't really use that argument.
Yeah.
So that's why it's so critical to undersell the catastrophic part of this, to make it seem like, hey, this is a problem, we're fixing it, but this is routine. This is what happens when you have a pipeline.
Yeah.
No one after the Challenger blew up would say, it was just a little problem with the O-rings. Right?
Fix the O-ring, we're good.
All we need to do is tighten the O-rings and then it's fine.
Yeah.
Except 7 astronauts are dead, and so you can't make that argument.
Exactly.
With some tiles too, I think.
Some tiles.
Yeah, I think that was actually what it was. Yes.
but it
I'm not an expert.
It was the O-ring, but it was the tiles that.
Right, but because the O-ring was not sufficient, I think caused the
Now we're
failure
getting into
of the
John
tile.
territory here with this conversation.
I don't appreciate that. Anyway, let's jump back into this because obviously this spill is in its own right a terrible thing, although inevitable, and we will see others. At some point, we'll all be back here, maybe all three. We'll be sitting here and we'll be talking about the next 300,000 gallon leak or the next 2 million gallon leak. Or maybe we'll be talking about the endangered species that were killed in this particular leak. For now though, we have this one, and it comes at a particularly interesting time actually when it comes to these pipelines and TransCanada. So if you bring up this map here, you're going to see the darker line there, the black line, that is the Keystone pipeline. And if you see as it crosses through South Dakota, roughly about halfway down through South Dakota is where it's spilled. But you also see those other colored lines there. And that's where we get into Keystone XL, the expansion pipeline that was rejected by President Obama. And what's interesting about that is, although after his election, President Trump issued an executive order to clear obstacles so that could be made, it's not just up to him. Actually, TransCanada still needed a permit from an independent 5-person Nebraska Public Service Commission at some point in the future. Actually, it turns out it's just in the next couple of days. They're gonna be ruling on this in just a few days to see whether Keystone XL should actually go forward.
Look, I do not like people who speculate without knowing, and I know nothing about this. But man, given the timing, right? It just reminded me when I read this the first time that given the timing, the incentive to lie and to undersell the leak is overwhelming right now.
I thought you were going to predict like sabotage.
But I don't think you can undersell this leak. I mean, the mere fact that there was a leak that spilled 210,000 gallons of oil, I think should be enough for a commission that, by the way, was already, they weren't just behind this Keystone thing entirely. You pointed out that President Obama, blocked it and
yeah, but he didn't really mean it.
Right. And that's why Trump, of course, didn't. But also Secretary Clinton, when she was running for president, said finally, even though a lot of people didn't buy it at first, that she was not in favor of the pipeline. And so, I mean, when pressed, she didn't come out against it. What's that?
They're the same.
They're the same, right? Yeah, of course they are. They're exactly the same. Never mind. So it doesn't matter.
Okay, let's get back to the pipeline.
Yeah.
So
but
yeah, you're right.
Sorry,
we got a tragedy here, people. Okay, so they're considering the possibility of finally approving that the XL expansion to this pipeline, which is a problem not just because it creates more pipeline that can have fault points like this that could lead to more spills like this, but it means that overall more oil will actually be pulled out of the ground and transported and burned. And that's really one of the problems here is that the particular type of fuel that we're talking about that these pipelines are transporting is not just the normal bad for the environment fuel, it's particularly polluting and bad for you type of oil. Maybe we should leave some of it in the ground, that would be a good idea. Now the question is, After this, will there be more pressure on the Public Service Commission to shut this down? I don't know. I assume that at some point, considering that Donald Trump, I looked back and he has tweeted over the past 6 years or so about the Keystone XL pipeline, literally dozens and dozens of times. He returns this is long before he was running for president. He was pushing for this thing. And we can go back through just a couple of his tweets that are very particular to what happened yesterday. He said in August of 2015, if I am elected president, I will immediately approve the Keystone XL pipeline. No impact on environment and lots of jobs for US. If I remember correctly, the estimate of the number of permanent jobs that would be produced by the Keystone XL pipeline was between 40 and 45. At the time, it was described as a Denny's worth of jobs, which is great. I love Denny's and I love 36.5 jobs, but I don't know that that's necessarily merits a presidential tweet.
And where he says no impact on the environment is great too, because based on what they know, John, it hasn't touched the water.
Hasn't touched it, and he also said this, so sad that Obama rejected Keystone Pipeline, thousands of jobs, good for the environment, no downside. And so, look, this comes after leaks in the Keystone pipeline. This was not like, hey, maybe everything will be rosy. They already knew that this system wasn't being properly maintained. And so, should we have any faith that he will learn from this particular leak and perhaps put some pressure on the Public Service Commission to shut it down? I sincerely doubt that at this point.
I don't think we need to worry because Jeff Sessions is going to investigate these leaks and get to the bottom of it. By the way, the Kim McIntosh, environmental scientist at the South Dakota Department of Environment and National Resources, says, in describing it, says, as described, it's not a tiny leak by any means. And the last spill in the pipeline, about 400 barrels of oil in Hutchinson County in April 2016, took about 10 months to clean up.
And they've had a couple of those, if I'm not mistaken, a couple of those around 400 barrels.
She said this will take much, much longer than 10 months to clean up. 20 months, she can't predict. I can't predict whether it will take 20 months or 12 months. So even as described, a major spill.
Yeah, and like you said, there's every possibility that in a few days or in a week, or 6 months, we'll find out that it was far worse. I mean,
well, the president's right in one sense because the jobs that these spills create in cleaning them up,
that's true.
Unbelievable, right?
True.
I mean, this is a real job boon to have this oil spill out all over the place because you need people to come in and clean it up.
Yeah, look, I have to say we've been reporting on these particular pipelines for what feels like years at this point, and the massive opposition to them, I found to be inspirational for a long time. The fact that Obama was pushed to not allow the expansion, that there's been a lot of debate inside of Canada about it, that the economy is changing in ways that it became at least temporarily not profitable to do this sort of extraction. But they are rushing now. They see the day when people realize, and it becomes more economically feasible. It's already economically feasible to do solar and wind, but they see that day rapidly coming where there will be no room left in the market for them. And it's clear that they want to extract every drop of money, not oil, money that they can in the meantime. And the problem is that when you're just rushing to do it, not only are you more likely to have spills like this, but the carbon still stays in the atmosphere. It's not like, well, later we get solar and so we'll be cool in the end. It's terrible that they have such a strong champion in the White House right now during a critical period immediately preceding renewables really taking over.
So, by the way, there's a great tweet you didn't read, but you pulled it up. Trump from 2012, March of 2012. Pathetic. Barack Obama did not want to veto Keystone himself, so he lobbied the Democrats in the Senate to defeat it. How's that pathetic? I mean, it just seems like governing.
Right.
Yeah. No, I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it by executive order. I'm going to sort of
see if we can get a consensus here.
If we can get a consensus and do it legislatively.
Well, at least he's not having it both ways. He's not attacking him for his executive orders.
That's right.
Yeah. Anyway, so unfortunate story there, but important that you know what's going on. With that, we're going to take our first break. When we come back, we're going to touch base again with the Senate version of the tax plan and the current debate over that after this.
I'm gonna tell you a story and then I want you to tell me what you think about the way I reacted to the situation and if you thought it was acceptable.
Guilty. Oh wait, I gotta wait for the story.
I know Anna Kasparian has some stuff to say, and the world needs to hear it.
But then he became woke bang. I hate it.
I love it. I love it.
Jesus and I used to do this trick where we would elongate the videos so that we would look skinnier.
That is the most positive drug dealing story I've ever heard of.
Bears don't give a fuck.
I trust you guys, audience. Don't let me down.
You don't believe in ghosts? Talking about pussy. Don't.
The food in Turkey is phenomenal.
Hey, we got spam in TYT. Where's our spam?
Oh, death.
Did you want to poop outside? No, I poop here. It's fine because I bury it.
And you know what happens in that water? Turns frogs gay.
And they can't stand the establishment. And then I slipped and fell on my ass.
Guess I gotta get comfortable here.
That is tomorrow's joke, Jake. When your time is up, what wouldn't you do for just one more day?
I'm going to try to have sex with you. If you don't want it right now, just roll up a newspaper and hit me.
Hottest